Hello everyone and welcome. The webinar will commence shortly. Make yourself comfortable, we'll get underway very soon. While we're waiting, I'll encourage you all just to drop in the chat box where you're dialing in from. And if you have any message for us and for our speakers, please drop a note in the comment section. Hello, Bernadette. Beautiful day here in Melbourne so far. Nice and sunny. We need a bit of depth. Okay. Just wait another minute before we get started. I can see more attendees joining as we speak. We'll be commencing in a second. Okay, we're nearly there. Exciting session. We have over 140 people registered, which is absolutely fantastic. I know we're all fatigued by virtual meeting these days, but it's a great opportunity to continue and enable knowledge sharing, especially when you have such an awesome pool of speakers. Someone's at the door. Okay, I think we can get started. Kia ora and welcome again, everyone. My name is Giovanni Ferrante. I'm the marketing manager for CIPS in ANZ, and I'll be your host for today's session. Before we get started, I firstly like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from where I'm dialing in from today, and that is the land of the Wurundjeri, Wurrung and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. And I'd like to pay my respect to elders past and present, and extended respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people on the call with us today. I'd also like to welcome our colleagues and friends from New Zealand. Tina koto, tina koto, tina koto katoa. As usual, a very quick recap of our Zoom keeping rules. So the webinar is currently being recorded. You can interact with attendees and with our presenters through the chat functionality, and I'll encourage you to do so. You can also ask questions. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end, and you can do so using the Q&A functionality. And the webinar is being recorded, so you will receive a link to the recording in the coming days. Now, today's webinar is brought to you by CIPS in partnership with Medius, and the topic is Intelligent Source to Pay, making good on the artificial intelligence promises to bring actionable insights for procurement. So many organizations are investing in technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process automation, but what we want to understand is how these IT innovation actually bring real benefit to everyday procurement activity. So throughout this session, we'll cover some of the latest thinking on artificial intelligence development, where AI can be applied and really assist procurement and finance as well on cost reduction, which I know it's a staple, but a lot of organizations are facing cost challenges, as well as how it can help eliminate friction in processes and actually help people focus on work that delivers real value, ultimately produce better outcome for the organization. So during the session, we'll also discuss the challenges and the benefit of digital procurement transformation, and we'll have a practical case study on robotic process automation. And we'll share a few tips and some advice on how to create a roadmap for successful digital transformation. So we have two awesome guests for today, sharing their knowledge and their insights. Chris Smith, He's the Chief Revenue Officer at Medius with global top-line responsibility. He's based in Brisbane. Medius is a leading global provider of e-procurement and AP automation solution. The group has more than 400 employees with offices in Sweden, where the headquarters is, the US, United Kingdom, Australia, Denmark, Norway, Netherlands, and Poland. In his previous life, Chris was a director and a board member at Vox Digital. He was also responsible for global sales, account management, bid management, and partner network. The second speaker for today is our very own Ben Ludik MCIPS. He's currently the head of procurement and property, finance and corporate services at Water Corporation WA. He's MBA qualified, holds a master's and honors in industrial organization psychology and a bachelor degree in industrial relations and commerce. As I mentioned, he's a certified practitioner. He's a MCIPS. He's member of our CIPS Profession Steering Committee, and he sits on a number of other boards such as APEX, ACSM, and Black Belt in Lean Six Sigma. So he has more than 30 years in global and regional experience across a number of industries, covering strategy, strategic transformation, business improvement, digital capability development, and automation, which is the topic of today's session, as well as strategic sourcing, procure to pay, integrated supply chain, and more. So without any further ado, I'd like to thank you both, Chris and Ben, for making themselves available to present today. And I will now hand over to you, Chris. Thank you very much for joining us.
That's great. And thanks for the introduction, Gio, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody that's joining from New Zealand. Great to be here and great for the opportunity to present today. Okay, so let's get into the agenda. Sophie, if you don't mind flicking to the next slide. Just initially, I'm just going to give you a couple of typical corporate header slides, just for those of you that don't know a great deal about Medius, and then I'll get into the core of the subject that we're talking about today, which is artificial intelligence in procurement, and specifically the source to pay life cycle or business process. And we'll talk about some practical applications and examples over through the software, through some of our customers also, and then I'll hand over to Ben, who'll go through some of his case study slides as well. Thanks, Sophia. So just a little bit about Medius. Again, for some of you that don't know a great deal about the organisation, Medius is actually a combination of two businesses that came together at the end of 2019. So Medius and Wax Digital. Wax Digital, as mentioned, I was as a board member and shareholder of that company. So Wax focused on the procurement side, and Medius was very much AP automation related. So we brought those two businesses together, as I said, at the end of 2019. Ironically, both organizations, both private businesses had been around for 20 years. So lots of longevity there as an organization. Currently, we have over 4,000 customers globally, transacting across 102 countries, with just over $160 billion of spend under management. And as I'm sure you can imagine, lots of users as well. We currently invest about, it's actually about 22% now, it's not about 18% of our turnover in product development. So all of our customers get free upgrades every month in the case of some of the modules, and every quarter in some of the modules also. So constant innovation and moving forward. And that's recognized by Gartner as well, as we're one of the leaders as from a visionary perspective, which sort of really lends itself back to that sort of product development and product enhancements as well. Thanks, Sophia. Really just on the solution set, I'll just cover this one as the slide transitions across. And really, this is the last slide from a corporate perspective. Is what we provide and what we offer is what we call a spend management solution, or a fully integrated source to pay solution, as many of you probably know. So yes, you can take the full suite, but equally, as we talk through the presentation today, we'll talk about some of the modular elements also from an AI perspective. So it is modular, so you can start with just any one of those specific modules, whether it's strategic procurement or transactional procurement. So it could be just supply management or sourcing or contract lifecycle management, or transactional procurement with purchasing or invoice processing. So yes, we have the full suite, but again, it is modular. We do have our own integration middleware also, so we can connect to third-party risk tools or marketplaces or punch out to external catalogs. But of course, really important that we integrate to finance systems as well. So we've got standard out-of-the-box pre-built APIs or integration adapters to many different ERP systems in different formats and protocols also to integrate to. So that as our own solution, we don't actually use any third-party middleware to do that as well. But that's enough about Medius from a corporate perspective. Let's get on to the main topic today. So Sophie, if you'd like to transition across. And really what we're going to do is talk about how can AI help you as an organization and a business also. But before we do that, let's just start by defining what artificial intelligence actually means from a procurement perspective. So Sophie, if you don't mind just clicking through to the next one. The transition's quite slow for me. I'm not sure for you guys. So if you see me pause, it's for that very reason. So before we actually look at any specific examples of AI and its place in procurement and finance technology, let's just try and clear up the definition and the difference between the two terms. And they are generally used pretty much interchangeably in this arena. And the two terms are artificial intelligence and machine learning. And the reason why they're used pretty much interchangeably is indeed that, to all intents and purposes, they really amount to the same thing. Now, AI describes a process where computers can simulate human intelligence, and that's one of the key factors there. Learning as a way of adapting behavior and responses based on experience to continually improve, whilst machine learning is simply a subset of that concept, interpreting a history of data and experience to predict the correct behaviors for new data received. So whereas classical computer programming, where things are hard-coded, relies on developers creating a set of rules that produce a set of series answers when combined with data, AI and machine learning combines answers with user responses with that data to generate new rules automatically. So that when the same or similar questions are asked, the new rules can be intelligently applied. Hopefully that makes sense. Sophie, if you don't mind transitioning through. So what is it we want from AI, and really what should the high-level outcomes be? Well, firstly, we want a system that will help us, not hinder us with more steps or business process. Intelligence that makes guidance and help every day. Recommendations of what to do next based on data, not gut instinct or guesswork. Intelligence that continuously adapts to daily life, not just a one-time fix. And all this as an embedded part of the business process. Again, it's not an extra step or investment. It removes steps and gives us a better outcome and ultimately produces savings also. Thanks, Sophia. And before we dive into a few examples where we're delivering these kinds of outcomes through AI to help procurement and finance now, I think it's useful just to touch on some at a high level in the context of the overall spend management or source to pay life cycle. And that life cycle spans a number of integrated processes from sourcing, contract lifecycle management, purchasing, invoice capture, invoice automation, and supply management. It's a flow I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's all anchored around a central set of reporting or analytics that not just from your company, but from a whole community, from our perspective of media software users also. So let's take a look at the impact AI is making in some of these individual areas. Thanks, Sophia. So take sourcing and the pressure to find new suppliers in order to reinforce supply chains or push down costs. AI is playing an increasing role in helping to identify new suppliers to shortlist from huge volumes of data sourced from both traditional data providers, but also millions of websites out there to provide a rich and continually updating supplier knowledge base from which to explore effectively pre-qualified suppliers. And then solutions like ours can automatically run sourcing events, taking business requirements and intelligently directing them to a series of suppliers to return and evaluate pricing at an order by order level. Now we'll touch on this point a little bit later also. In contract management, intelligent contract management capabilities can allow for the onboarding of large volumes of contract documents and associated data, learning from reading the documents, what metadata to extract and where it is, so that document classification becomes largely an automated process. And then intelligent contract review means being able to interrogate contract documents automatically to uncover inconsistencies, risks, potential red flags buried within documents that will allow only be uncovered when the organization is at the wrong end of a claim or a lawsuit. Thanks, Sophia. Supplier management means the automated classification and segmentation of suppliers, enriched by a wealth of data sourced from external stakeholders, internal stakeholders, external sites, and you can see some examples on the right-hand side, and there are others also. Sources run through algorithms to filter, evaluate, and commonalize that data, so you have a rich live view of supplier master data and ultimately market sentiment also. Thanks, Sophia. While the procurement process is all about iterative improvement and the elimination of manual process, here we want to learn where issues are reoccurring and what actions are being taken to overcome them. How can the system predict a problem that is likely to happen in the workflow, like guided buying or approvals or receipting, and take steps to avoid that issue if it becomes one, of course. Thanks, Sophia. And finally, invoice automation, where volume throughput without error is really the name of the game. It's totally transformed by AI from the point at which an invoice is received in whatever format that may be to the point at which it's actually paid. AI and machine learning can act heavily on that process to the extent that most invoices never need to be touched. They can be read, coded, linked to purchase orders and sent to payment, either in our solution or the finance system, all automatically without the need for human intervention and really true touchless UI. Thanks, Sophia. If you'd like to trigger the poll, that would be great. So AI and machine learning are already playing. Go with me for a second, I lost my slide there. So AI and machine learning are already playing a significant part right through the source to pay lifecycle. So let's take a look at a couple of examples in a little bit more detail. Thanks, if you can transition. Can you go to the next slide, please, Sophia? It's actually the one before that, if you could go back one. That's great, thanks. The first and perhaps most obvious is invoice capture, taking inbound invoices from suppliers in whatever format they arrive and turning that document into data with the highest possible degree of confidence about its accuracy. Now, why is it one of the most obvious? Because where AI and machine learning really shine is volume processes, both because there is a lot of data to learn from, but also because of incremental process improvements make a great deal of difference where there is a high throughput. Thanks, Sophia. So Invoice Capture has come a long way in recent years from a really very dumb first generation where, and I'm sure you've experienced this, where paper and PDF invoices would be read based on a very fixed template that would actually have to be established per supplier and per invoice document. So the system knew exactly where to read on a document to pick up that right information, often and actually with very low accuracy, through to present day where we have highly intelligent capture capabilities that are able to read documents with a high degree of accuracy right out of the gate. Thanks, Sophia. And it's that high degree of accuracy, regardless of whether the system has ever seen those documents before, then refining that reading to deliver completely touchless processing by quickly learning from any corrections or instructions provided by the AP user. So the next time a similar invoice comes in, it requires absolutely no manual intervention at all. Learning is based on user input over time and can foresee corrections with the help of artificial intelligence and big data. Thanks, Sophia. Now, if you remember back to the 5 steps of what we want from AI, this really shows them in action. So of course, we want a system that will help us, not hinder us, with more steps, built into a process that continuously adapts to daily life, not just a one-time fix as an embedded part of the process. In this case, the workflow element, sending the invoice where we don't have a high level of certainty about the read-through for manual review, is an integral part of machine learning process. There is no need to teach the system. It simply learns from the activities that subsequently are taken on any invoice to continually refine, enhance accuracy, and reduce subsequent touch points. Thanks, Sophia. So that ultimately invoices with all fields captured correctly, e.g. green in this example on the right-hand side, can simply bypass any verification, with machine learning driving high levels of accuracy and performance, removing the steps in the process to increase automation. Thanks, Sophia. Now, exactly the same is true for another associated part of the order to invoice lifecycle. Coding an order or an invoice to the correct departmental cost center. Again, things have changed fundamentally over the years, where every order or invoice had to be hand-coded. Today's technology system should be able to automatically provide or at least prompt the most appropriate and likely coding for a given document based on the history of all the data that it relates to, whether it's user, location, supplier, category, and so on. Thanks, Sophia. Now, the machine learning algorithm for suggested coding only highlights code combinations to clients when the accuracy is over 90%, meaning our suggestions match the manual input over 90% of the time. And in fact, and in reality, that match rate is actually closer to 90%. So, extremely accurate. And when we get it wrong, our algorithm learns, as we've been talking about, from the changes that a user might input. So constantly increasing the accuracy for our customers to reduce manual data entry every time. Thanks, Sophia. Next slide, if you can. Now, it isn't just coding. Automatically finding a purchase order to which an invoice relates is again something we can do with a high and ever improving level of accuracy thanks to AI and machine learning. So we're continually looking to AI to drive out manual processes, cut processing time, and improve and enhance the user experience, typically by removing the need for them to experience anything at all. So true touchless UI. And because the learning process is always running, these results improve day by day by day. Thanks, Sophia. Next slide, if you can, Sophia. Thank you. Now, another area, and I did allude that we would come back to this one. So another area we see AI delivering and driving real practical value is a completely different point in the source to pay lifecycle. When it comes to the transactional process of getting the best value, and so driving directly into cash, few systems yet are enabled automatic sourcing to play a part. Now, this is what we do for 2 clients in the aerospace and defense sector. Now, we're consuming demand from 2 ERP systems, in this case, SAP and Oracle, and users are placing that demand automatically and intelligently on a roster of potential suppliers to allow over 11,000 orders a month to be competitively tendered. That equates to 11,000 e-sourcing events per month, and placed without, again, any manual intervention, and completely touchless from an e-sourcing perspective as well. So from ERP system out to suppliers, all the way back again into ERP system, completely touchless and completely automated. Thanks, Sophia. Now, all this learning is based on data that compose a problem. If you don't have much data, at least at the start with, then there isn't much for AI to go on, and it will take a while to realize those benefits. But if you can tap into a community of data from across dozens, hundreds, if not thousands of businesses, then you have the same needs, face the same challenges, and apply the same process or processes, then you'll have a much faster route to success, but a more widely informed one also. I'm going to talk about this, and did mention this at the start also. As I mentioned, we've got over 4,000 customers, and the learnings we can apply automatically through the software drive the behaviors and returns that our customers enjoy every day. Thanks, Sophia. Actually, the one before, if you don't mind. Thank you. So not only can we compare what you were doing and how you're doing it with other customers, pointing to where process improvements can be made to bring you up to parity or even a leadership perspective, we can also suggest improvements that go beyond the media system into procurement and finance strategy. And there are ways you can act to reduce potential fraud or spend categories that would benefit from increased competition where your pricing doesn't appear to be too competitive to, say, some of our other customers. Thanks, Sophia. These prescriptive insights, as we call them, are the accumulation of big data and the marriage with AI, underpinning a system that is a long way from the linear workflow model of old, as we've been talking about, and instead transforming procurement and AP automation software from dumb-weighted to intelligent system. One that can really genuinely help address the challenges every business faces today and obviously into tomorrow and the future. Thanks, Sophia. And the last couple of slides for me, and I'll hand over to Ben, and really just to bring this to life a little bit. So where we actually see customers realizing the benefits of the investment in our technology from a source to pay or a spend management perspective. So on the supplier management side, we typically see reduction of costs from a vendor setup and an account maintenance perspective of about 90%. We typically see average savings from an e-sourcing or an e-auction perspective. And again, these are averages of about 18%. Obviously, we do see some higher levels of savings depending on the different categories. We see contract management or contract lifecycle management administration costs reduced by up to 30%. We see a massive reduction in Maverick spend of about 41% in the purchasing lifecycle. From an AP perspective or invoice processing, we see processing time reduced by 70% and actual costs by 80%. And then spend visibility from an analytics perspective increased by 54% as well. Now, these are not made up numbers. These are real numbers that are supported by our own insights and benchmarking data, but also data that we certainly get from the likes of Gartner and Hackett Group and Aberdeen Group as well, and others like Ardent Partners and Spend Matters as well. Thanks, Sophia. And really, I've sort of touched on this a couple of times, so just the last slide from me. If you'd like to transition across, Sophia. And really just to, reinforce, our experience as an organisation. I know I mentioned there we've been around for 20 years, but we do genuinely work across, 4,000 customers, and that's growing obviously rapidly every year. Across many different industries, many different verticals, private sector, public sector, and of course, many different ERP systems as well. So, so thank you for me. Thanks for your time. I'm going to hand over to Ben now, and Ben's talk through one of his case studies. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. And good day, everyone. Yeah, it's exciting to see what's happening in the AI space, Chris, and what you've shown us, because from a business improvement perspective, it's exciting for us as corporations in the business to see that the effort and complexity of picking up continuous improvement opportunities and getting that analytics done on your behalf and giving you recommendations dynamically through AI solutions is certainly really positive outlook. So I'm certainly quite excited about those trends and where this is going. What I'm going to do, just to give you a bit of an indication, maybe next slide, please. Sophia. So I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of, I think, what represents all of us on this call. I would venture as far as saying, without exception, all of us basically is pretty much on this journey at some stage of this path and different stages of maturity. I think the 2020 paper that CIPS and the Melbourne University did around digital procurement and the trends and what's happening across quite a large survey group implies 95% of us and our businesses are already in this space, optimizing and doing digital transformation in some form or shape. We've got a lot of legacy systems and historical debt systems that we've invested in that we're trying to optimize. And at the same time, we're trying to explore how do we upgrade, how do we refine, how do we optimize and use the technology and where that is going. And we do know that one of the big benefits of technology at the moment, it's becoming a little bit lighter in terms of investment, gives us a little bit more agility and flexibility, and in some cases, shorter cycles of investment, which makes it a bit easier. And that's really exciting, and how we bring this all together. So, so you'll recognize yourself on this path. And this is just our case study over the last 4 or 5 years at Water Corporation. When I started here in terms of procurement and property management. And I think maybe I'll start with reading the paper, the paper's definition of digitalization. And I think it's important to understand that it says here, what does digitalization actually mean? Digitalization is the practice of redefining models, functions, operations, processes, and activities by leveraging technology advancements to build an efficient digital business environment. So it's really maximizing and optimizing as we go along, because we all have systems, we all are already in this space. It's just a question of how to optimize and continuously improve. And that's really the exciting bit about that. Now, from a Water Corporation perspective, when we looked at this roadmap 3 or 4 years ago and understood where we were, we already pretty mature in the procure to pay space. Transactionally, we've already in that space quite advanced and mature. But we were sitting on a more than 20-year-old ERP investment with a lot of debt, technology debt, as we call it, and we knew we had to move somewhere with the intelligence, and where do we go from here? And it was really moving in the space of more intelligent supply chain, integrated supply chain, and moving from a P2P to an source to pay type optimization, and also integrating for asset management, because we are asset intensive company. So we need to make sure that what we do enable our core business. So effectively, this roadmap was done in the context of our corporate strategy, as well as the technology strategy for the corporation, and we had to sync it up. So behind this is a blueprint, as is the 2B architecture, and a bit of a roadmap that syncs us with the major corporation roadmap and journey that's on. And I think that's really the bigger context. Now, the exciting things about this is because we were so mature already, business process-wise, systemized, we can procure to pay, tapping into the mature technologies like robotics process optimization and workflow optimization and electronic signatures and visualization technologies that was already available. That was easy for us to get going with in the last 3 or 4 years. We spent a lot of time on that. We could take the business rules and the business requirements and actually just automate that, where there was still a lot of manual entry, people doing a lot of manual entries, extracting data, pivoting it, and doing VLOOKUPs in Excel spreadsheets, sending emails, etc. And we could automate it all and actually free up people's time. So that's what we spend a lot of time on. And where we are now is making sure we understand the business requirements and how do we then bring in artificial intelligence and the advanced technologies that Chris has actually shown us now to take those rules and the data sets that we've now built up and actually advise us how to continuously improve the business rules and the elements that we've already started optimizing, and how do we systemize and optimize that moving forward. So very exciting. I enjoyed this path. Next slide, please. I think the important thing with this slide is really is to understand that whatever you do around optimization, as most of you would know, is that it's in the context of some kind of a business transformation or business improvement context, because there's different pathways of optimization and improvement. There's not one pathway. Robotics process optimization is one layer of that, one element, and some types of optimization make sense to put through that pathway. And some things make sense to layer AI and other elements on top of that. Like, for example, with the new technologies, we know that smart contracts potentially definitely have an artificial intelligence enabling component. Definitely we'll look at that for our next stage. As well as we know blockchain has also got a smart contract element. So we need to just still work out for ourselves early stage that proof of concept and how do we use the technologies to move into that space. But just for the case study today, for RPA, I think I'm just going to give you an example, is that we go through our normal business improvement and Lean Six Sigma optimization analysis, prioritize and look at all of the process that needs optimization. And then we've got some criteria to determine where do we optimize. Is this just normal data and process systems optimization within the current systems that we need to configure certain things or enhance certain capabilities that we've got? Does it need to be systemized because we're still doing it manual, or we can systemize it and optimize that and bring some elements into that with extra data analytics and intelligence? Or is it something that we can use some of the available technologies today and just automate that? So that third pathway, there's my case study that I'll just give you a brief a view of what that looks like for us and where we are. And it's work in progress, but we're quite well far down that line. Like I'm sure some of you might be already, but it's quite exciting. And then the new technologies, as it becomes more mature and we clarify that, because some of that is still in early stage, some of that is already fairly advanced. And I think the way I try and make sense out of this, to link to what Chris has said, is that I see RPA, or robotics process optimization, as like a traffic light. You know, it's like rule-based systems that tells the traffic light where to switch over and what, and as the lines are tripped, there's if statements that triggers these traffic lights to do what it needs to do. And artificial intelligence is like GPS. It's just a higher level of taking more data feeds, more information, actually working out routes and data. And there's built-in machine learning that picks up the common practices and makes some recommendations around what practices works better than others from historical data, and that kind of recommends that. So it's kind of, for me, the difference is now we're dealing with traffic lights at the moment. We've got really well automated traffic lights and systems that we've automated, but we need to try and link the GPS and data information and actually inform these traffic lights to start dynamically changing its rules as the traffic changes. And that's kind of how, in my mind, an analogy that helps me to understand how these different technologies helps us to improve our journey. Next slide, please. I think maybe just one point from the next slide into this slide. I think that the process that we've deployed around introducing new technologies, and RPA in this case example for us is really an agile technology process. So effectively, you do the proof of concept, you set up your proof of concept, and then you actually have your roadmap of processes in sprints that you do through an agile technology, and you've got and as you go along with your implementation rollout, you become faster and quicker, and it gets much faster to do these things. For example, one of the bots that we've got, which is called Bolt, we've given our bots names, and one of them is called Bolt, and he, for example, he or she or it, it's probably an it because it's a no gender type of role that's box in our org structure. You integrate it as part of your org structure. They get access like any human in the structure to have access to systems and the security layers around that, but they've got access. And Bolt, for example, is a standby bot to help with bulk changes in our master vendor data. The first time we did it, it took us 2 or 3 weeks to set it up, test it, and do a major changeover for moving our payment terms in bulk earlier. From 28 days from end of month to 30 days. And then that took us a few weeks. And then the second time we did that bulk change in our master data and all the rules plus the communication to vendors. The second time we did it a few months later to move to 20 days payment terms as a bulk change. We did it in a couple of days. It was all done within a week. So effectively, something that would be done by 2 or 3 people over months to update those master data things. You know, this bot has really enabled us to be efficient and free people's time up. To focus on value adding time. So the main message in this slide is we're dealing with software here that captures and interprets rules and repeatable tasks that can be captured in the system, and we automate it as best as possible. And that's what robotics does. Obviously, the artificial intelligence that Chris showed looks over everything and actually make recommendations to change the rules and give you answers or options to consider of how to change those rules. To improve that over time, which is really the next level for us. We've got a lot to work with. And I think the big focus for me from a people, there's a lot of benefits here that I think a lot of you should be aware of. The last 2 boxes at the bottom is really our big change management drive. The message was freeing up people's time from routine, mundane tasks and freeing up the time to do continuous improvement and value adding work. That was really our big business case and the driver, and repurposing people's roles. Next slide, please. And that's it. That's in a nutshell. I think the people focus, the change management focus is really one of the key things to get right in this whole thing. And if you get it right, it does create a sense of excitement, and there's a culture of repurposing people's roles and getting them to do the things that we don't get time to do and the things we know to help us to be more forward-looking. And it's honestly really just let robotics do robotic stuff and let people do people stuff, and we continuously improve ourselves. And that'll be more and more looking at the exception reports, the trends analysis. And if we start introducing AI and those technologies, that information is what the people need to look at to make decisions on how to change ourselves and continuously improve ourselves. And then my last slide, the next slide. I think this slide is basically, this comes from the research paper that CIPS in the University of Melbourne did 2020 around looking at digitalisation, the procurement and supply chain. And the definition I've read to you a bit earlier is really there. What is digitalisation? It's around optimizing the systems and going with the technology advancements. It's really like your vehicle, the vehicle that you buy that drives vehicles and fleet. You look at the latest models comes with the latest features, and you need to understand that versus what is the bolt-ons and the additional features around your systems that you can help you to optimize the capability and have access to these capabilities. Now, the main thing I want to just focus on here, and that'll lead us potentially nicely into the questions and answers, is the main challenges. From the over 700 people that completed globally in our profession and in wider businesses that answered this survey, the top 3 items there came out was related to cost concerns of new technology. So to address that from our perspective, with these type of new technologies, a lot of that is not heavy investment, but I think one thing we've learned in the way we've approached the different cost elements and challenges is really you need to initially, when you start the process, there is an investment around licensing, minimum licensing, packaging for the software, getting experts in to help you to configure it, setting up a center of excellence and getting some internal people trained up. So there's initial investment. And yes, your initial process, first couple of processes, your proof of concept, not necessarily going to give you a positive business case. And that's why you need to know the pipeline of processes that's coming. And you have a multi-year view of this is what we can automate, and the cumulative impact of that will give you a break, even in our case, definitely over. We've got quite a lot of robotics processes running at the moment, and the cumulative impact of that gives us a really positive business case of benefits over multiple processes and flexibility to free up time and make efficiency savings, which then ultimately, like any investment, pays for your initial investment. So it should be seen in context of the bigger picture and the scalability and the economies of scale that you will achieve over time. And that's really the business case. It's actually quite powerful if you do it in that context. The second message that came out there was related to resistance to change. And I did touch on that in terms of really it's important to focus on the benefits and the people benefits and the value add that you get with repurposing people and giving them that excitement that they're part of the digital journey, and they will be reskilled and be part of that process and have a bit of extra focus on adding value and continues to improve, which if everybody gets in that, they get quite excited. Most people do. That's a sense of purpose really and achievement that they experience in different shapes and forms. And maybe the third element to mention there is it talks about lack of organizational-wide coordination, and security concerns. Now, the important thing there is whatever you do here needs to be in context with your context of your large organization strategy, and your cybersecurity teams and your technology architecture teams need to be there. As part of our process, they check whatever we implement is checked as part of our checklist of the security elements. Does it fit the architecture? How does it fit in? And our business improvement team, we work closely with them to make sure we use the existing processes to introduce this with the right checks and balances around that. Then it works fine. But you need to organize yourself to make that happen and have this continuous process of bringing a pipeline of bringing technology into your business. So that's me. I'll leave it there and we can go to questions and answers.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ben. And welcome back, Chris. That was very interesting. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts. I encourage the audience, we've got a bit of time for Q&A. I'll encourage the audience to ask some questions. You can send them through the Q&A functionality. I've got a couple of questions on my own. There seems to be a perception that, technology is expensive, as we've seen also from the research insight that Ben shared. Let's do some myth busting. Chris, I must start with you. Is it true that implementing AI is only appropriate for large corporate, and can that be applied to existing process, or do businesses need to reconfigure the whole way they work?
Yeah, I think that's one of the, and again, another reason for showing some of the examples of the customers that we work with. We very much deal at all ends of the spectrum in customer size. So, everything from a sourcing customer that might only have 5 users to, I alluded to a couple of aerospace and defense companies there. I can tell you who they are. One's Raytheon Technologies, probably arguably the biggest A&D company in the globe. I think they're a $30 billion company, and British Aerospace in the UK and the US as well. So as an organization, we certainly work with small, medium to large organizations that, we provide exactly the same technology to one of those businesses. So for me, it's relevant to every procurement or finance organization. And certainly, AI or machine learning is applicable to existing processes. So we don't go into an organization and expect them to change all their business processes and have a big, massive change management program. The software is highly configurable to adapt to a customer's existing requirements or business processes. So we certainly don't expect, big, massive change from that perspective.
Thanks, Chris. And Ben, from your experience, I don't know if you've had any trial run in other organizations. Have you had to change your business processes a lot in order to implement, even looking at the robotic process automation in water corporation? Did you have to reconfigure the existing process?
Yeah, I think process reviews is always part of the process. You need to understand if your processes are effective and efficient. I think what's the difference from the past technology to the future is a lot of us have highly customized, heavy, inflexible processes locked into your investments. It's hard to undo that, and there's still elements of that, and we're still trying to untangle some of those ropes around our feet and as we go along. But the new technologies does give more flexibility and options to be able to have more flexibility, hosted solutions. Like Chris mentioned, changes that is available through new technologies, and it's not as heavy and challenging to adjust yourself and access some of these technologies. And that's a trick to find that balance, because there's still the big systems investments, but you need to understand how do you do that in context of the best of breed, or the solutions and the multiple solutions that you'll always have, because some of our data is in third-party systems. So you're going to still have data lakes with intelligence to bring the data together and make fact-based decision-making. So I think it's really improving, and the technologies is really kind of helping us to make decisions on shorter cycles of technology investments, and different horizons of optimization, which is really improving and making our lives a little bit easier. But it is a moving beast, and you just need to stay close to that.
Yeah, really wise advice. Now, something else that comes up in literally every conversation that certainly we have with the organization going through a digital transformation. What are the key challenges, particularly, from a customer side, from the user perspective, when implementing a technology solution? And if you do have any advice for the audience on how to address those challenges and potentially remove them at all, Chris, we might start with you on that.
Yeah, I won't retouch on the things that Ben's just talked about, because I think everything that you just discussed from the research paper is absolutely relevant. So us as an organization, when we're embarking on this journey with a customer, I think there's two things that really stand out for us. Again, not retouching on some of the points that Ben's mentioned. So first of all, this misunderstanding or misnomer around the complexity of and cost for integration. So it's one of the reasons why we have our own middleware, and we have pre-built APIs and adapters to, as you saw from one of my slides, to many different ERP systems. So we've simplified that. And I can genuinely say, regardless of the type of organization, regardless of the ERP system, integration is pretty much all the same every time. There's the odd scenario or case where you might have one or two different integration channels, but when you're implementing a source to pay solution or a procurement solution, it's broadly the same every time. So again, another reason why we have those pre-built APIs and adapters. So first of all, before the customer even signs a contract with us, is getting through that misunderstanding and complexity and explaining that. So as I said, we've simplified that. And unfortunately, the biggest challenge that we have with the customer, and again, Ben's alluded to this, is resource availability on the customer side. So there might having a project team to implement the system on the customer side. So especially if it's a full suite, having a project manager, having key stakeholders from finance, procurement, maybe from legal, from IT. So having those people available through the journey of implementing the system, that can be a challenge sometimes for us as an organization, and it's fundamentally important to the success of the program as well. They're the two things that stand out for me.
Thanks, Chris. Ben, any particular challenge from your end other than the one that you already outlined before?
No, I think I've mentioned the main challenges, and I think it's like Chris said, is making sure you've got a holistic approach. You understand where it comes in, and staying in touch with the technology advancements of the in-system technology advancements versus the best of breed is important, because that knowledge and insight is important, because it is an evolving industry. And I think and artificial intelligence is a good example. We know that we need to do the next year or two a major ERP upgrade and refresh and change out our SRM system. So we know that's a big change. And we know with the new upgrade, there's some embedded AI capabilities that comes with that. But we do also know that there's a lot of our data and information around managing our assets and our larger systems that's not going to be in that base system, that we need to, because we use a different system for asset management, for example, for fleet management. So we need a layer of intelligence at a next level to pull all of these elements together for us. So staying in touch of what that looks like is really the challenge, and understanding your horizons of investment and what you can do and optimizing that is key. And there's an education piece, because people don't always understand that. And that's why you need to collaborate and make sure you go through a common understanding. It's not a perfect understanding, but it's a common understanding of what's possible, and then have a joint journey map to work on that at the right time and place.
Thanks, Ben. Another one for you, Chris. What's next? What's in the planning? And are you guys developing something around, I don't know, virtual reality or virtual assistants? What's the next step in your digital support to clients?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, actually, when you talk about virtual reality, and we're talking about the goggles, and back a few years ago, things like Google Glass, which is no longer available, but it's moving through different areas. So actually, about I'd say 3 years ago, we actually had our software working with Google Glass. So you could put the Google glasses on. Obviously, you got the screen in Google Glass. You could actually use the procurement software to raise a requisition and do approvals. You could walk around the office all just wearing the Google glasses. So we actually did that about 3 years ago. The same technology using the Oculus virtual reality headsets also. We've even integrated our reporting analytics. So if everybody's ever seen that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, where he's standing in front of those big screens and he's waving his hands around, moving the screens and the dashboards around. So if you imagine putting the glasses on, the virtual reality goggles, the Oculus ones, you can walk into a virtual room, and the same screens you would use on your PC, you can see them in front of your eyes, and you can use the dashboards and reports and drill in just using the goggles and waving your hands around. So we can do that now. It obviously still needs roadmap and improving, but it's we can do it now. Really, for us, the future is going to be more touchless UI, I would say. So even down to the basic level of the experience we've all had over the last 12 or 18 months of working from home, as an example, not having access to certain systems within the business maybe, but even ours being cloud-based, we're getting more requests now for integration of our software into Zoom, into Microsoft Teams. So if you imagine having a Teams channel set up, let's call it procurement, and a user from the procurement needs to raise a requisition, you just type into that Teams channel, I need to order 10 big pens, as an example. You just send that request to the Teams channel, and our software is automatically sat in the background, picking up that data, raising a requisition, sending it through the approval workflow, as an example. So I think we'll see more touchless UI coming pretty rapidly in the future, and then obviously developing further into those virtual assistants. We have integrated things like Alexa and Siri into our software before as well. Again, sort of first stage. So literally you can say to Siri or Alexa, I need to order 10 big pens. And then the virtual assistant takes care of it from that point as well. Again, our software integrated to those virtual assistants. So I'm talking about it as being the future. It's stuff that we've actually done already in our sort of design hub, if you want to call it that, our innovation center. So it just needs taking further.
Awesome. Safe to say the future is already here then. That sounds quite exciting. And, you know, it's exciting that we can implement those technology within our profession. So I'd like to thank you both for you know, sharing this insight with our audience. It's been a very valuable session. Just before we go, I'd like to make a very quick plug for another event that we've got coming up. This is the annual awards that we run every year. It's a session effectively celebrating excellence in procurement, supply chain management across the ANZ region. We have an awesome virtual ceremony on the 21st of October. You can scan the QR code that you can see on screen to go through the registration page. And you can also find some information on the CIPS website. Again, that's taking place on the 21st of October at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Hopefully we'll see you there. I'd like to thank again Medius for supporting and sponsoring this session. Thanks again, Chris and Ben, for sharing insights. And before you go, if you can take a few seconds to complete our event survey, that will be much appreciated. Thank you again, and hopefully see you all very soon.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Ben. And take care.